I want to just share for you just a moment. Originally, I was going to come up and wear clown shoes to lighten the mood for our topic today. But it felt just a little on the nose, given that we are processing what's going on and what I talked about earlier and what we prayed for. But I was going to wear clown shoes because I wanted to lighten the mood. Because here's what I know. I will step on toes today. I can guarantee you that there'll be some toes stepped on. You'll feel it. I'll feel it. The topics are sensitive, and they're certainly not easy. And so here's my encouragement. Here's my encouragement as you feel the ouch, the uncertainty, the ooh, and why, and what. As you feel it, my encouragement, my prayer is that you would circle back and let God speak. See, God's the only one who changes hearts. God's the only words who have authority. And so that's why I want you to circle back and talk to God, to let Him speak. Take some time this week to let Him speak, because you will have some feels today, and that's natural. But please let God work into that, speak into that, and transform our lives, our relationships, and our marriage. And so have you ever thought this way? Have you ever thought this way? For crying out loud, I'm right. The toilet seat should be up or down. The toilet paper should roll this way. Have you ever said this? Have you ever thought this? That you are right. That this is how it should be done. The dishes should be dried this way and put in the dishwasher that way. Have you ever thought this way? Right? You're right. That the only way to do laundry is my way. And if they would just see things my way, it would be perfect. Right? Haven't you ever thought that way? I mean, relationships kind of mix two people from various backgrounds, and sometimes there's a little bit of an explosion. We all have in our relationships, and especially our marriages, frustrations and friction. And sometimes it is a slow grind, and other times there are sparks. There is heat and there is intensity. And for our love story to flourish, we must understand what's happening. What's going on? Why is there heat? Why is there sparks? Why is there this grind? What's happening? And what can we do about it? And so what if? What if we saw conflict for what it is and created some healthy ways to work through that? See, marriage and relationships, the goal isn't to avoid conflict. The goal is to have healthy conflict. If you don't ever have conflict, maybe you're actually not really reaching the level of relationship God's called you to. And again, I know the topic of marriage can be hard. Last week on Sunday, just watching your faces, praying for you this week, I know some of your stories, many of your stories, and I know that the topic of marriage is hard. For some of you, you're longing to be married, wondering when, why not now, how come it hasn't happened? Others in this room, there is hurt. There is absolute pain, grief, and hurt from the past. Maybe it was a divorce, a betrayal, some incredible difficulty. Maybe for some of you, your love story is missing. You are missing them tremendously. They're gone. And it may just be a few months or many years, but the grief is fresh and there is still a hole in your heart. And I know for others, you've sworn off marriage. You're like, if that's marriage, why bother? That ain't for me. And so I want to just help you. I want to help you if you're married to fight for a terrific love story. And I want to help you if you're not married to have some tools, to have some understanding, to think about some things ahead of time so that when you and if you get married, you're already ahead of the curve when it comes to these conflicts. But first, I think you and I need to see something important. It's not easy, but it's important. There's a common reason for many of the conflicts in our relationships. James 4 says it this way: what causes fights and quarrels among you? Don't you love how real the Bible is? I mean, it's like, hey, have you ever wondered why you're that way? Why this happens? Why do you guys act like two porcupines in the same sleeping bag and fight, fight, fight? Why does that happen? Well, don't they come from the desires that what? There's these desires that are at war within us, that battle within us. There's stuff going in our head and our heart before it ever gets expressed through our actions and our words. See, you want something, but you don't get it. You do not have because you didn't ask God. God's not in the midst of it. He's not the center of it. We talked a lot about that last week. And when you ask, you don't receive because you ask with wrong motives, that you may spend it on what to get your own pleasures. And here's the deal. That's not an easy verse, is it? We may not want to hear that. That one of the biggest problems in our relationships is the person in the mirror. Because often we blame, don't we? Often we bargain, don't we? If only she would. If only he would, then I would. Because we have this weird idea that if they're doing all their part, then maybe I'll pull my weight. This 50-50, this halves that make a whole, and it's junk. Because God is telling us there's something happening in our heart that creates a healthy or unhealthy atmosphere in our marriage. Did you hear me? That's what James is telling us. There's something happening in our heart that leads to, that creates, that leans into a healthy or unhealthy marriage. Healthy or unhealthy relationships. And so I just want to help you recognize that in marriage and many of our relationships, junk piles up. Have you seen that? Have you noticed that? The habits, the hurts, the selfishness. I call it trash. Just imagine if we would have emptied all the garbage cans in this building and just thrown them on stage here. Kind of the mess, kind of the smell, the trash. And see, we understand that there's trash in our house, don't we? We understand you have a kitchen garbage, a bathroom garbage. Every house has trash. But here's the deal. In your house, you actually deal with it, right? It smells, it stinks, it's overflowing. You get the teenagers to bag it up and take it out, don't you? And the same thing is true in our relationships. We have trash. It piles up. Every family has a mess it makes. It's what happens when people are in the same space. And hear me, even dating, even with all the ooey gooey, rich and chewy feelings, even when you're Twitter painted in love, even when you're dating, you still have trash. You just use more perfume, right? You clean it up more often. And so that's why we must deal with the difficulties in our relationship. We must deal with the difficulties in our marriage. Because if we don't, it gets stinky. And then it gets dangerous. And so I want to help you deal with the common junk piles that happen in many marriages. Over many years, many counseling, doing premarital, doing marriage counseling, here's a couple of the junk piles that get really dangerous and really stinky pretty fast if we don't deal with it. And my challenge for you this morning is that you would fight. That you would fight to take out the trash in your marriage. And honestly, there have been times in my marriage that there has been a nasty smell that fills the whole house. You could talk to Morgan, you could talk to our kids. There's just that feel to the house. You know what I'm talking about? Something's kind of off, something's kind of, something's not right. You're not on the same page. Kind of this conflict and fights. Maybe the tone is icy. The affection is low. Often you just go through the motions and get done what you have to. You only interact at the level you have to. And it's nasty. It ain't much fun. It doesn't help the marriage. And I hope, please don't miss what we talked about last week. Because today builds on that foundation. Everything we talk about today is not possible without the foundation of last week. That God is cheering for your marriage. And your relationship with Jesus enables a greater relationship with your spouse. And so I'm just curious. Because I'm new to Salem. And you're not. How many of you would say it was hot this week? Just raise your hand. If you think it was hot this week, like 105, if you think it's hot this week. Now, how many of you liked it? How many of you like that heat? How many of you wish you were like Arizona bred and born, right? Now, out of those of you who like that heat, how many of you had air conditioning? I'm just curious, right? I mean, if you like heat, it's probably because you have air conditioning. Is there anyone who likes heat that doesn't have air conditioning? Because some of you, I don't know. But check this out, right? In our relationships, we create high temps, right? That friction, that conflict, that we didn't see eye to eye, and there's sparks, and there's words, and there's anger, and there's blah. We create high temps by our selfishness, expectations, sin, and stubbornness. James told us this. But there's something that I believe helps cool things off and creates the right atmosphere. Just like when it's high outside, we can crank up the thermostat on the AC, we can grab a fan, we can do whatever it is. I think there's something that helps cool things off in marriage and creates the right atmosphere, and that's margin. It's called margin. That you and I would develop margin in our marriage. That you would think ahead and figure out how to develop margin in your life if you're not yet married. Because have you ever had one of those weeks? The weeks where you're just frazzled, right? You're exhausted. You're ready to snap. Just done. Have you ever had one of those weeks where it's like, no talkie, no touchy, I am grouchy? Anyone been there? Maybe it was this week because of the heat, right? There was this meme with a cake that says, sorry what I said when it was 109 degrees outside, right? We have these weeks, we have these moments, we have these events where we're just done. Too much, too many, you're just done. And so imagine one of these weeks and you get home and all you want to do is melt, right? All you want to do is whatever it takes to be done with the day and melt. But something inevitably happens, right? There's something that goes on. You greet something, you meet something. I mean, often we have this dog named Bentley. He's a Vizsla. He's high-strung, a little social anxiety. And even though we have a nice locking garbage can, a special lid, he still gets into the dumb thing. And so every now and then we come home and there's trash everywhere, right? And it's just one last thing you don't want, you don't expect. And sometimes there's nice little words that come out of our mouth. Bentley, you Bentley, right? Something happens, we react, and a fight happens. Because every single one of us has limits. Every single one of us has limits. We have a certain capacity for the trigger flips or the circuit breaks. I mean, imagine you have one kid with you and they're playing and they're happy and life is good. I got my grandkid, yay! I got my kid, yay! Now you add 2 kids to that, right? Now you add 2 more kids to that and a dog, right? At some point, crazy catches up to you. At some point, it's not what you can handle. Now add a trampoline and a swimming pool with 4 or 5 kids and a dog, and it kind of gets a little crazy. You see what I'm saying? No matter how much bandwidth you have, how much margin you have, there's a moment you don't have any more. And so you got 2 kids, you got 4 kids, you got 6 dogs. Hopefully you don't have 6 dogs. But you got a trampoline and a pool, and now somehow you're supposed to make dinner and do the laundry and fix the toilet and walk the dog. Anyone exhausted? Because that's how our relationships are. We're stretched so thin. We're exhausted. We don't have bandwidth, emotion, mental energy to invest and to fight well. Again, at some point, crazy just catches up to you because you're beyond capacity and it gets nuts. And again, I don't care if you're married or not, relationships work this way, especially if you're close, intimate, and doing real life together. And so because we're stretched so thin, trying to do so much, we end up reacting to whatever it was that happened. If we were more calm, if we had had a nice day, if we weren't just kind of skating by, we probably could have processed it a little better. But we end up reacting. See, margin is that space, the breathing room, to just process what's happening, to respond well and not just react. When something happens, you either have the ability or no ability to deal with it. You either have the energy or no energy to deal with it in a healthy way. And when I'm at my limit, when I'm running on fumes, it's just so much harder to process, isn't it? When we're at our limit, when we're past our margin, it's so much harder to process what happens before we react. There isn't this space to actually calmly go, is that what they really said? I reacted this way. What's happening? Why am I ready to blow up at this person I love? There just isn't the margin to respond, and so we react. When we're at our limits, it's so much harder to care and be involved instead of just get it done and stop the frustration. And so there's certain issues that tend to attack and leave you fighting each other instead of fighting for each other and being together. Because often we are so busy, we run on reserves. Have you felt that way? We're so busy, all we're doing is running on reserves, just trying to accomplish what screams the loudest instead of being a team. And so hear me. How to spend money together is one of those margins. We need to have a healthy marriage. Are you ready to have your toes stepped on a little bit? Because we're going to talk about money. I mean, talking about marriage was hard enough. You're going to talk about money? This was Morgan's and my greatest issue for the first 5 years of our marriage. Constant fights and friction because we had different opinions. We had different desires. We had different upbringings. And we had to come together and make some decisions about money. We had to create some margin. And so I want you to see some insight from God. I want you to see what God has to say about money out of 1 Timothy chapter 6. But people who long to be rich, man, most of us would say, that's probably a good thing. Yay for mega millions and Powerball. Yay for a raise or a new job promotion. So lean into what God's saying here. But people who long to be rich fall into temptation on our what? What's the text say? Trapped. But Dan, money brings freedom. Money brings what I want. Money gets me what I need. We got to wrestle with this text. God's saying something about when your love of money leads you to how you live, there's a trap by foolish and harmful desires that plunge you into ruin and destruction. For the love of money, not money itself, the love of money is the roots of all kind of evil. And so teach them not to be proud and not to what? I mean, how's that feel? Don't we trust in our money often? I got enough in my bank account, enough in my 401k, I got some equity in my house. It's easy to trust in our money. But if nothing's happened in the last 24 years, we've seen how unreliable it is, the stock market, the housing market, the economy, crash after crash, recession after recession. But yet we still trust in our money, which is so unreliable. Rather, their trust should be in God, who richly gives us all we need for what? I just don't want you to miss that word enjoyment. Because I meet two people. If you have enough faith, God gives you everything you want because he's Jesus genie in a bottle vending machine. I pray enough, I push the buttons, and I get all I want. There's some people who think God and money are that way. And there's some people who think God and money are, I have to live as poor and austere and as poverty-stricken as possible because that's the only way to seek God. Well, actually what God says is right here in Timothy. Watch out for the traps. Watch out for what you love. And God gives you things that you can enjoy for his glory and your pleasure. Tell them to use their money to do good. They should be rich in good works and generous to those in need. By doing this, they'll be storing up their treasure as a good foundation for the future. This is not your 401k. This is for heaven, so that they may experience true life. I know that's a lot. We spend a whole sermon unpacking that passage. But my encouragement is don't just read that and run on. Examine your heart and what God has to say to you. Create margin by giving yourself some wiggle room. And if you're married, when it comes to money, what do you agree on? What matters? If you're married, what do you agree on about money and what matters? If you're not married, work through some of these things ahead of time so that you don't go in blind and have more fights than are necessary. And when money is tight, how do you fight? And so I want to give you six money ideas to discuss with your spouse and come to agreement on. 6 ideas for you to discuss, 6 ideas for you to process, 6 ideas to take home and work through. Number 1, do we truly believe what we have belongs to God? I mean, do I truly believe that? Or do I just say that? Did church teach me that? Or do I actually live like that? Do I really believe that what I have and how I've made money actually is because of God's gifts and God's goodness? Do I understand that I'm called to manage it well, not just have it? That God will hold you and I responsible for how we will use what he has given us. Do I believe it belongs to God? Number 2, do we truly believe that there are things more valuable than money? What do we think they are? Have that conversation with your spouse. Have that conversation with your fiance. Write those things down if you're not married yet so that you can have that conversation in the future. What do we believe, if we believe anything, is more important than money? Number 3, jealousy, discontentment, and worry about money can easily lead us to sin. Do I believe that? Do I believe that that's not healthy in a culture that absolutely filters and posts everything they're doing? We even have this whole word, are you jelly? Are you jealous about it? Do we trust God to provide for our needs or trust more in our bank account and reserves? Number 4, do we truly believe being generous is a privilege, an investment, and a responsibility? Have that conversation. Do we actually really believe that being generous is a privilege, an investment, and a responsibility? Number 5, do we truly believe planning, call it a budget if you want, do we truly believe planning and living within our means is good? This allows for room to respond as God prompts us and gives us margin when the unexpected happens. Many years ago, we had a huge salary increase. It doubled our salary, basically, when we moved to a new place. And so we tithed, but that still left us several $100s more that we set aside every month. And so we tithed, and then we got to have these conversations that said, well, what do we know? Who do we know? What's happening? And every month, not only did we get to give offering to God, but we also got to give offering and help to someone else. That generosity was a joy and a privilege, and we couldn't wait each month to go, what are you going to bring to us this month, God? What do you want to do this month for us? And number 6, can we talk about money? I mean, really talk about money. Do I listen to your concerns? Can we pray together and agree about money? Those 6 things, if you work through them, will help you create margin and reduce fights in your marriage. It will help you trust God to provide, to come together, set limits, have priorities, and enjoy generosity. The other area we need margin in, if I haven't stepped on your toes yet, I'm about ready to. The other area I believe we need margin in, another difficulty in marriage that can pile up, is sexual intimacy. Sexual intimacy. So I told you ahead of time it'd be a PG-13. And I know some of you are like, Dan, why are you talking about sex at church? Simple. We live in a sex-saturated society. The world has plenty to say and plenty to sell with sex. Much of what we watch, how we even view people, and how things are sold are through the lens of sex. And yet no couple comes into marriage with a perfect understanding of relationships, love, and sexual intimacy. I mean, go way back, way back. First chapter of the Bible, and it started with 2 naked humans in a garden. God made them like him, his image, with purpose and passion. Hollywood didn't invent sex, guys. Hollywood doesn't understand sex. Hear me. When God made Adam and Eve and he brought them together, God wasn't shocked. He didn't peer around a corner one day and go, "Whoa, what are you two doing?" He called it good, very good, naked, and not ashamed. Why do we talk about sex? Because God created sex. God has a lot to say about the beauty and purpose of sexual intimacy. The world is a megaphone and it's missed it. It's time for God's people to stand up. God created sex and he gave it as the distinguishing aspect of marriage. A unifying and fun connection. Song of Solomon says it this way: his mouth is sweetness itself. He is desirable in every way. This is my lover. This is my friend. And I know some of you, you're feeling it. You're squirming. The feels are real. The feet are hurting. Because some of you grew up and you were told this. You grew up in a conservative home and you were told this about sex. Sick, bad, nasty, gross. Save it for the one you love the most. Right? Some of you grew up and you were told, that's sick, that's bad, that's nasty, that's gross. Save it for the one you love your most. And we wonder why we're confused. For others of you, sex has become a duty. You just do it. So there's not a fight. Or maybe there's shame. Something's happened and it has caused sex to be painful, dirty, broken. And my friends, I am so sorry for that wound, that hurt, and that tragic reality. I know for others, they find their identity in their sexiness. That's marred what God's created. You find your identity in your sexiness, that you're a size 0, a size 2, or that you have to be buff and swole and all the new words. There's these constant whispers, if I just lost a few pounds, then he, then she. And we look in the mirror and we have a distorted image of what God has created. The problem is that we have been conditioned to see sex primarily as a physical act. And yet God designed it so much more and so much deeper. Because God designed sexual intimacy as a bond. As a bond. A unique, unifying bond at the deepest level of human experience. Refreshing, connecting at no other level. I mean, it's as simple as this. And it's as mind-blowing as this. We used to call it making love. It's not called that anymore. It used to be called making love because there was beauty there. There was care there. There was honor and love of coming together in something beautiful. We've wrecked it. We've broken it. We've tarnished it. We've sold it. And no wonder we're confused and wounded by it. Church, I believe Christians should have the best sex life of anyone. Hollywood should be envious. Why? Because of the depth. Because of the intimacy. Because of the emotions and oneness. The beauty and wholeness of sexual intimacy. That's making love, deepening love, refreshing and bonding love. Because sexual intimacy is a gift. It's a gift. It's not gross. It's not get. And it ain't God. It's a gift. And that's why it needs healthy margin. That's why it needs healthy margin. To give, to serve, to love, to be with, and to be one. Emotional margin, friendship, connection, desire, and time. This isn't new. You've heard this before, but I hope you hear me. Many of the issues inside the bedroom have started outside the bedroom. Your spouse probably feels love differently than you. Maybe it's gifts or time or service or affirmation or touch. Don't love just the way you love. Learn to love the way they experience love. And so just like with money, I want to share a few thoughts. Things that you can come together and talk about. And again, if you're not married, things you can think ahead of and prepare for. The first one is this: crock pot versus microwave. Crock pot versus microwave. Most men are microwaves, not all, and most women are crock pots. Again, I don't mean to be stereotypical, but guys are a few buttons and ding, ready to go, right? And for most women, it's a slow heat up. It's a slow warm up. It's a slow preparation. As they say, sex starts in the morning, is in the kitchen, and finally, yada, yada. Again, we have kids in the room, so I'm trying to be a little more, But you see what I'm saying? For guys, woohoo! Yeah, you ready? You bet. Yep. Women, again, not trying to be so overly stereotypical, but helping you understand there's a slower process. Number 2, make it fun. There's an author who called it the hilarity of sex. And I think that's beautiful. The hilarity of sex. Make it fun. Again, I'm not talking about some position or physicality. I'm talking about the emotion of it, the joy of it. Take time to ensure that he and she both enjoy it. Number 3, and this is where our world really misses it. There's a difference between intimacy and intensity. And here's what I mean by that. Our world, as its view of sex, has missed intimacy. A lot of what we've been talking about: wholeness, oneness, beauty, fun. And because sex is just a physical act, all that they have left is the intensity of it. So that's why they focus so much on different positions, different things, and again, PG-13 here, but I'll let you understand what I'm saying. Sex is a letdown again and again and again for our world because it's just physical, so you have to figure out how to make it more physically intense. That's the world's view of sex. God's view is intimacy. Into me see. That's how he designed it. That oneness, that connection, that beauty, that togetherness. Don't fall for intensity. Go for intimacy. And last, sexual intimacy, is both a thermometer and a thermostat of your marriage. It's a thermometer and a thermostat for your marriage. What do I mean by that? It's a gauge. How healthy is your marriage? How healthy is your relationship? How healthy is your intimacy? It's a thermometer. It tells you how hot, jokingly. And it's a thermostat. Maybe, guys, you want to set it really cold tonight so she has to cuddle with you. That was supposed to be a joke. But it's the same thing, a thermostat. You can set a direction for your marriage, not only, but with sexual intimacy. Turn it up. And hear me, if you have nothing left for your spouse, emotions, energy, brainergy, working, frustrated, if you have nothing left for your spouse, you will have nothing left for your marriage. And so I've got an assignment for you. You ready? Make your kids squirm. That's my assignment for you. If you're married, make your kids squirm. Hold hands, make googly eyes, say things, have fun with that. I don't care if your kids are 50, it's still awesome. Give them something to look forward to. Good job. Why? Because your kids need to see you date your spouse. I don't care if you've been married 50 years, 60 years, 40 years, your kids need to see you date your spouse, helping them to see how to have healthy relationships. We'll talk about more about this throughout the rest of the year, but I just want to introduce an idea to you. Empty nesters equal reinvestors. Empty nesters are models, examples. Empty nesters are reinvestors. Not, we made it, now we can rest. I would love for the gray-haired marrieds in this room to just be able to show off a beautiful marriage in all that facets so that we are in awe, whether we've been married 30 years, 10 years, or 5 years, that we see the 40, 50, 60 benchmark and go, help me understand, help me to get there. Empty nesters are reinvestors. The number one reason I wanted to marry Morgan was I loved living life with her. And I can tell you, through God, our commitment and taking out the inevitable trash, through understanding her more, getting my eyes off myself, I enjoy living life with her so much. And that's my last point. I know we've already talked about a lot, but real quick, not only do we develop margin, but second, we commit to serve each other. Commit to serve each other. Ephesians 5 says it this way, submit to one another out of what? For Christ. Just let that marinate in your soul. You submit, you come under one another, you love one another, you serve one another because you love Jesus. That's how, that's why, and that's who. Your love will lead you to serve, to do what's best for them. See, marriage doesn't have to be a three-ring circus, my friends. Marriage does not have to be a three-ring circus. The engagement ring, the marriage ring, and now the suffering. You want a healthy marriage? Serve one another. I don't mean 50% or when you feel like it. And so don't miss this. This is the big idea about serving one another. This is so key. Serving surrenders rights and assumes responsibility. That's what serving means. It surrenders rights and it assumes responsibility. It surrenders my rights. I'm owed, I'm due, I'm tired. If she would, it surrenders those rights. And it assumes the responsibilities. I will serve, I will love, I will help, I will take out the trash. I don't care which way the toilet paper goes, but if she does, then that's the way it goes. Because hear me, each minor choice turns the course of your marriage. Every choice you make to serve, it's a healthier trajectory, a healthier direction. Each choice you make to be selfish and get out of them and drag from them and create an atmosphere in your home that's hurting is a choice that leads the direction and course of your marriage. For Morgan and I, we can look back and see the turning points. The move, the financial strain, the difficulties, the conflicts. We can see the turning points and the disaster points. Each minor choice turns the course of your marriage. And so I just want to give you a moment to reflect and talk to God, to share with Him what's happening in your heart. Go ahead and close your eyes. Worship team, you're welcome to come up. Again, all I said at the beginning was that you'd circle back and talk to God. And I want to give you that choice, that opportunity right now and for the rest of the week. What's He saying? What's He pointing out? Where's that friction in your marriage? Where's the frustration in your relationships? What might God say to that? How healthy is the margin? If you've built your own life with your own bank account and you're not one, is that what God would have for you? Can you agree about God's principles of managing His money? When it comes to sex, is it physical or intimate? Is it togetherness or an act to get done? When you look at your spouse, do you want to lovingly serve like Jesus has lovingly served you? Will you fight to take out the trash? To seek God out, His word, His plan for your lives and your marriage together? Will you commit to create healthy rhythms of margin and to serve one another? God, we recognize that we might have some sore toes today, because this is hard. At times we've created unhealth in our marriage, difficulties and friction, and we feel that. We feel the past, we feel the hurt, we feel the wounds. And so may you just spark in us some hope, some healing. How to take out the trash, our next best step to take together. May you reveal that for your glory and our good. In Jesus' name, amen.